Hey there, tech enthusiasts and growth seekers. Get ready for an insightful episode of Tech Sales and More with your host, Claudio Maidler. In this podcast, Claudio sits down with inspiring people from all around the globe discussing sales and beyond. He'll dive deep into expert interviews, sharing actionable strategies, discussing personal development, and also life itself. And now, enjoy the new episode.
Great to see you. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Claudio. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to talk outbound and cold email. Hopefully your audience gets to learn a little bit about something and then get the sales sprint before the new year, because everyone's always trying to close some deals while budgets are lining up and all that, right?
Absolutely love it. That's the spirit, Nick. I'm so happy you are on the second episode of Tech Sales and More. And let's bring this on. Please, Nick, tell us more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I got started in my sales journey, I would say, through the restaurant industry, actually. I was always a very extroverted person. I love talking to people. So I just kind of fell into, first I started as a busboy, and then I was a waiter, and then I became a bartender. And long story short, the restaurant industry definitely kind of burns you out, right? Like you be working until 10, 11, midnight sometimes, and then you just go out and party with your coworkers, whatever. It's a very quick lifestyle, right? So I wanted to kind of settle down and get a more of a cushy job. So I got into logistics as a logistics broker. I was making 100 cold calls a day. And then after that, I wasn't really interested in logistics per se. I wasn't passionate about it. I understand the value of it, obviously, but I wanted to move into tech. Tech was booming at the time. Interest rates were low. VC money was flowing. So I got hired as a SDR at a software company in Chicago. And then, long story short, we were doing roughly 100 cold calls a day. That's the personal benchmark that I have for myself. And then I booked 2 meetings from email in the entire year. And I was like, email doesn't work. I'm not going to waste my time, right? Pareto principle, all that. And turns out email does work. We were just doing it wrong. So long story short, I figured it out and I started a business helping other companies how to build out cold email systems. And now I'm the founder of Slyleadz, been going at it roughly 3 years now. And we've built outbound systems for over 40 clients to date.
Wow. That sounds amazing. So you're basically building outbound calling systems, outbound email and outbound calling system, or what? Can you tell us a little bit more about the challenge and the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So the 3 primary channels that we do are email. We typically always start with email to get validation first, and then we move to LinkedIn, and then we finally move to calling, because calling is the most labor intensive. Even with phone trees and parallel dialers and all that, you still spend so much time on the actual phones that it's not as scalable as a cold email system. And then especially more recently with the LinkedIn changes, you can only do 100 connection requests a week now. So either you need multiple LinkedIn profiles to get that same volume, or you have to adjust your strategy. So right now, what I think is the hot spot is LinkedIn inbound, actually, through content creation and creating a marketing flywheel. But we could talk more about that later.
Love it. That sounds so cool and interesting. So what do you think is nowadays? What do you think is nowadays the biggest challenge when entering tech sales and when working in a rather junior, let's say, sales role?
Yeah. So there's 2 ways that I look at this, right? I look at this from an individual contributor employee level. There are a lot of challenges that those people face. And then from an organizational level, right? There's a product, there's product market fit, there's marketing, there's sales, there's leadership, commission structure, all that. There are so many moving pieces at all times. And I think the main problem, the absolute baseline level, is who are you solving a problem for? How quickly or easily can you solve the problem? And then the end all be all, in my opinion, in tech sales is booking a call, right? If you don't have a clear answer to what your prospect gets from getting on the phone with you, it is way harder to book a meeting because they don't get anything tangible. They know you're going to pitch them something, but what do they get, right? That's the hardest part in sales, in my opinion. once you get on the phone, you can start building the relationship. You could talk about use cases, success stories, this, that, and the other. But outbound wise, you have to establish that, assume the problem that they have, they're aware of. And if they're not, you have to convince them the opportunity cost of not solving it. And then you're going down a whole rabbit hole of every single reason your company could potentially exist and why you're better than your competitors. But yeah, I would say the number one difficulty that organizations as a whole face and the salespeople is, what does the prospect get by getting on the phone with you? If you cannot clearly define a tangible end result from that 30 minutes or whatever, it's way harder to sell, just period.
Yeah, and especially, right, when you cold call, you even have just a few seconds to convince, right, the prospect that it's worth the time to listen to you. Very interesting concept. So you think that having an outbound system is a must-have in sales nowadays, right?
Yeah, so I've said this before in a couple of videos on LinkedIn. You can follow me at Outbound Expert, shameless plug. This is how I see it. If you don't have a tangible end result that your prospect can get and you can't explain that concisely, you're always going to struggle, right? So, for example, in web design or SEO, everyone and their mother pitches an audit. It's, hey, I could audit your current systems and then we could talk about deeper how we could help you fix your issues. The reason that it used to work is that you couldn't assume the problem, right? You can't just say, hey, your website sucks, let me redo it for you, right? So the offers had to evolve. And now it's turning more into, hey, if we could guarantee to double your conversion rate, leading to X increase in revenue based on X price point, based on X traffic that you're driving, that will lead to X ROI for you by working with us, right? You could try to make that assumption, but a lot of times you're going to get shot down and they'll be like, we don't drive enough traffic, or our conversion rate's already good, or we're already working with someone on this. Like there's so many different potential objections that you need to be able to answer. And I would say before you even start doing any outbound, you need to put your offer through the Hail-Meyer Catechism. This is some secret sauce. I recommend all of you guys look into this. So back in 1977, I want to say, not a historian, sorry. This guy, Heilmeyer, I don't know how to say his name in German. He came up with this idea for DARPA. It was actually like a scientific study where they were like, hey, should we even research this or do this experiment? And essentially it outlined exactly, what are you doing? Why is it different than what your competitors or what they would be doing in-house? How much will it cost? Who cares? What are the checkpoints to success? And there's like 8 or 12 questions, something like that. So I definitely recommend everyone look into that. If you can't clearly define exactly what your prospect's getting by talking to you, then you have an issue. And this is what sucks from a sales rep, specifically like an SDR level. A lot of times you have higher ups, management, marketing, founder level, C-suite, whatever. They tell you, hey, this is what works. And you can't really step outside of the box. And that's a real challenge and a struggle for me. I'm kind of more of like a Wild West. Like when I'm writing a sequence, I do 6 variations of email 1, 4 variations of email 2, 2 variations of email 3, and then a 4th breakup email typically. A lot of times marketing is writing a sequence for you, or your SDR manager is writing a sequence for you. You don't really even have any say in what's being said, but you're the one on the ground actually having the conversation. So this is a challenge, I would say, towards organizations. Listen to your SDRs. They are literally on the front lines talking to potential prospects every single day. Every single conversation they have is super valuable market research. And just because they get a no doesn't mean it's a no forever, right? Only 3% of your target market is actively solution seeking. If 46% are going to be buying in the next 3 to 12 months, it would be absolutely insane to not focus on the 46%. So you need to be able to recognize what conversations your team's having, recognize the 6 to 12 core objections that they're facing, come up with conversion mechanisms, assets, trainings, webinars, marketing stuff, collateral to solve for each of those objections, and then train the SDRs on, hey, is this person problem aware or not? Is this person solution aware or not? Are they solution seeking or not? Everyone can go and look for that 3% that's solution seeking and just cycle through the TAM over and over and over again. But the real winners in outbound know how to nurture their audience. And that's the key, in my opinion.
Super interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of companies are having, that great product, but even maybe a great marketing team, and the issue though is that these products are not being sold by themselves, and so you must really train your sales reps. That's also my mission, right? My mission is to help sales reps to develop those skills that we don't learn at school, at college, university, and in the very most of the cases, not in a company either, because they expect you as an SDR, they expect you as an AE, right, to deliver, to right from the start, or they think it's very easily, learnable on the job, and it is learnable on the job, but it takes a lot of time, to get an exceptional sales rep, I think, because exactly as you say, there's so many things to consider and to prepare, and also the product, right? The objections, just as you said, the objection handling, that are all a lot of learnings that I think need to develop beforehand, before you send out your sales reps, and otherwise they're lost. Just as you said, the sequencing, I think, the follow-ups, to have an efficient follow-up system, that's something we can prepare nowadays very well with the help of AI as well, right? So, which actually would bring me to the next question. Tell me a little bit more about the impact of AI for outbound systems, or for the right approach when considering following up, sending out emails, etc. Don't you think that with the help of AI, there's a lot of help and a lot of knowledge now accessible for every SDR out there?
100%. Yeah. So there's two sides of the same coin here. A lot of it's really annoying and it's really bloated, but a lot of it's really valuable too. So as a sales rep or a founder or somebody who's trying to build out a sales organization, this is what you have to consider. There are so many tools out there, and there will continue to be so many tools out there. But as a sales rep, what I talk about is the Pareto principle. It's activity above everything else. I could spend years and years researching the best tech stack. I could spend years and years researching the best prospects. I could go on their company pages, find when they were funded, find the last time they did a LinkedIn post or news press release, whatever. The last time they had someone get hired in a key position as a stakeholder. The last time that stakeholder posted about their dog on LinkedIn, find their dog's name. What breed is it? Oh, I know that dog will love this dog treat, right? You could go down that rabbit hole forever, but I rather just send the email. If I can build a very segmented list, and going back to the funnel that we were talking about, if I can assume that this person has this problem, I rather talk about the problem than talk about their dog, or talk about their LinkedIn post, or talk about their company retreat or whatever, right? Like, hey, we're doing a sales kickoff. We're going to Las Vegas. Boom, you should definitely check out this hotel. This is the best blackjack dealer, like whatever. You know what I mean? Like, you could definitely build a relationship in that way. But the end all be all for me in outbound, there's only 3 reasons anyone's ever going to buy from you in a B2B context. They're going to make more money, they're going to save more money, or they're going to save time. If you can't clearly quantify which of those you're going to help them do, it doesn't matter how personal you are. You could be you could be Mr. Rogers, right? You could be Mary Poppins. Doesn't matter. Like, what they care about is how you can improve their situation. So at the end of the day, it all comes down to list building and segmentation. I know this audience probably struggles with this problem, right? And I'm using the word probably lightly here, because the wider the audience, the less likely they all have the same problem. But the smaller the audience, the less at-bats you get. So it's going to be constantly a battle between one and the other. It's how can I reach out to as many people as efficiently as possible with a very relevant, personalized message versus, oh, this is a Dream 100 client list, like Chet Holmes style. I'm going to do every single thing I can to get these 100 people. And it's a balance. It's not one or the other. I think it's both.
All right. So what do you think then is your very best advice, turning cold leads into warm leads, into warm prospects?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say first and foremost, you need to know your customers more than anything else. That's where you start with everything. It's who are your current customers? What use cases do they have? What was the trigger or reason they ended up buying? And then what was the cost of not buying? Right? That's one of the key things in the Hail-Meyer Catechism that I think a lot of salespeople and marketers and organizations overlook. It's, hey, we can help you do X, Y, and Z. It's okay, sure, you and everyone else has that exact same claim, but what are they missing by not doing it? Right? So I'm trying to think of a good example off the top of my head, right? So like, let's say you're working in investment firm, private equity, business broker type of context. It's, hey, interest rates are about to come down. The prices of everything is going to come back up. Now is your time to start exploring what a potential sale will look like. What's the opportunity cost of not doing that? You might be sitting on your hands, and when the time comes for the fire sale, there's going to be so much competition because you didn't prep beforehand, right? That's like a weird example that I just made up on the fly, but that I think that's very, very key. It's not only we could do this is the problem we solve. It's also what is the cost of not solving the problem? I think that's where most people get lost. It's in cybersecurity, for example. This is very, very difficult to sell because you're selling on the fear that something bad will happen. And like nobody assumes anything bad is going to ever happen to them, right? Like, oh, I don't need insurance. I won't get hit by a car, right? I won't get in an accident, or my house won't light on fire. Like, of course, you don't think it'll happen, but if it does, you still want to have insurance. You know what I mean? So it's that sort of thing where it's, how can you define what the cost of not working with you is? And also, you don't necessarily want to be like fear mongering, right? In the cybersecurity space, you see this all the time. It's, hey, Bonobos just got hacked, or Walmart just released their entire email list, like this, that, or the other. It's, there are so many potential avenues to potentially sell someone. But if you just focus on the fear of not working with you, that's one place to start, but it goes way deeper, I think.
Yeah, I agree. So it's about explaining very well the cost of not buying or implementing your solution. Yeah, creating a fear of missing out, FOMO, and creating urgency, right? Being able to really, which actually goes hand in hand, right? Creating that sense of, okay, I need this solution as soon as possible in order to avoid having a certain pain point, right? Or missing out additional revenue.
Yeah, exactly. And then if I was going to I always keep my emails as concise as possible. Nobody's going to read a giant block of text. If your email is over 100 words, it's getting ignored. Just hard and fast rule, in my opinion. Obviously, there are certain situations where that's not the case, but exceptions are exceptions. I would say every single organization needs to be able to say something like this. We help target audience achieve desired end state without pain point or common challenge. That's like 30 words. If you can't say what you do, how you help, how quickly you can help, and why they should work with you or why other solutions aren't as strong, then you need to go back to square one and clearly define your audience again. Because if you don't know what the quantifiable end result is, then you're always going to be stuck assuming what people need instead of actually knowing, you know? And at the end of the day, you could have the best product in the world, but if you don't have that message fit, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I totally agree. So when we speak about emailing, what do you think are so, considering the point you just mentioned, being very concise and being able to transmit, right, that core message, the core impact your solution has, what do you think are some common misconceptions about emails, about cold emails, and how can businesses overcome them to achieve better results when it comes to cold emailing?
Yeah, you touched on the main one. It has to be concise. Like I think everyone's kind of in that era now, right? We have Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, whatever. If you can't clearly convey your message in like 3 seconds or potentially 6 seconds, it's getting discarded or ignored. The other misconception, I think, is that open tracking is valuable. It's not. It's completely a vanity metric. We don't necessarily have to get into like deep dive into the technicality of this, but just think about it. There was a huge stir when Apple released their new privacy update. I want to say it was iOS 16. Apple essentially said, hey, we're going to stop allowing outside tracking without your consent. Great from a consumer perspective, in my opinion. I don't want the big techno magnets, whatever you want to call them, knowing what I'm doing on my phone. Like, that's personal, right? That's private. I don't want them knowing. So how did that change email? Any email that you send out with a pixel in it trips that filter because it's not plain text, right? So especially if you're selling to like Fortune 500, these companies have very elaborate email systems to prevent spoofing, phishing, spam, like viruses, malware, whatever else. Anything that is not plain text in your email potentially trips any of those filters. And that includes open tracking. That includes links. That includes images in your signature, right? So I know marketing, sorry, sales reps, I know marketing is going to be like, no, you need to have our signature. Our signature was designed very professionally. It's about our brand and keeping it unified and this, that, or the other. And I'm like, cool, your brand is unified in the spam folder. That's it. Like, open tracking is a pixel. Signatures, images, they're all pixels. Links are pixels. There is a caveat here. If you send a plain text email and it lands in the inbox the first time and then they respond, you're whitelisted. So then you could send attachments, then you could send links, this, that, or the other. But all the time I see this, a book a meeting link in a signature. If your book a meeting link is in the first outbound message, you're probably landing in spam and you don't even know. So if your reply rate sucks, that's probably why. I focus purely on reply rate and positive reply rate. How many emails do I need to send to get a reply? How many emails do I need to send to get a positive reply? Those are the two metrics that matter most, and then call book after that. But it's a leading indicator versus a lagging indicator.
Absolutely love it. So that means, Nick, that you would, in the first email, or in the first emails, if necessary, if you want so, until you have a response.
Yeah, we're hitting the TAM every quarter, probably.
Exactly. So until you have the response, you would entirely avoid any type of pixels like a signature, images, any attachment, links, etc. Is that correct?
Yeah. Essentially, it's a hard and fast rule. There are some exceptions, right? So, for example, something that I do, not every organization is going to be kosher with this, but I like doing it. I'm kind of a Wild West when it comes to sales. Sending something like a Kermit meme, right? Some would argue it might not be professional, right? But if you have Kermit like sipping the tea, like something like that puts you on a personal level. But once again, you're sending the image. So if you're 3 or 4 emails in, they're probably not responding at that point. So just throw the Hail Mary. That's like one of the exceptions, I would say. But at that point, it's already a Hail Mary. So you're kind of not losing anything by doing it. That's the one case I would say that it might make sense to do something like that. And then this is another thing too. A lot of companies use a tool like SendSpark, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm going to make a video of me. It's going to change via AI for the first names, and it's going to show the prospect's website for every single email that I send out via video. You can do that same sort of thing without sending the video in the first email, where it's just like, hey, I'm introducing myself. This is who I am. This is what I do, blah, 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 whatever. And then send the video in the second one. So since you landed, hopefully the first time around, you're more likely to land the second time around, as opposed to sending the video the first time around, potentially going to spam and never recovering, right?
Very interesting. Very interesting. I remember when I have been a new sales rep, I used a lot that, the approach of introducing myself, the company, and me on a short video. And I remember, it's true, if you haven't built rapport beforehand, if you haven't built often some type of conversation before, you might and immediately right from the start in the spam folder, right? So it's quite a pity for the work you invested into taking the video and explaining, practicing the pitch and delivering the message.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say too, right? So if you're doing this at scale, like I'm all for doing the unscalable first, right? You need to validate ideas. You need to make sure that it works before you try to build a scalable solution. So I'm all for custom videos, right? Like specifically for offers like SEO or web design, you need to be able to show that you're an expert first and foremost. And one of the best ways that you could show that you're an expert is one, having a really popping LinkedIn or website or something, YouTube, that establishes your credibility so they could just look you up. But two, you could put a voice or face to the name and create that custom video specifically for that prospect. But once again, it's not necessarily scalable, So that kind of leans more into the Chet Holmes Dream 100 client list. I'll send you a brick to your office saying I'm hoping to build with you, right? Like if you're working with LTVs of $100,000 plus, then doing the unscalable is always going to be worth it. But if you're selling $1,000 product to SMB, you need to be able to scale and go way wider because you need way more conversions as opposed to one large conversion, right? If you're working in machinery, construction, business broker, mergers, acquisitions, private equity, investment firm stuff, one client is huge. But if you're working more in the SMB space, you just need to scale it up 10x, 50x, 100x potentially. And AI allows you to do that. But at the same time, other people are using it too. So you got to stand out still. You got to zig when they zag.
Yeah, good point. So you think that personalization and targeting, right, are key, and being able to surpass, right from the start, the spam filter, while still sparking that interest, demonstrating that you know what you're talking about and that you are solving their need. Which brings me to the next point. What do you think are some effective strategies when sending cold emails, crafting a compelling subject line, and increasing the opening rate? And just as you said, the opening rate itself doesn't help you much, right? The opening rate and the response. What do you think could be some effective strategy? First of all, to spark that interest with the subject line. What's your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. So you kind of touched on this, and I want to expand on it a little bit more before I answer your question. There's two games you're playing here, always. First game is you, Google, Outlook, whoever else. You need to land in the inbox. If you don't land in the inbox, you could have the best message in the world. Doesn't matter. They're not reading it, right? Number two, once you actually land in the inbox, how can you stand out from the other 73 messages that they got that day, right? So in terms of subject lines, shout out to Will Alfred over at Lavender. Really, really love his content. If you don't know who he is, look him up. All the data that I see in terms of subject lines and my own personal anecdotal evidence is shorter is better. You want to make it look like an internal conversation, right? So the classic still works. People might hate it, but the classic subject line is quick question. And the reason that it works is because it's very compelling and enticing. It piques interest, right? So some people might be like worn out or burnt out because of that, but there's so many different variations that you could do, right? Like first name, comma, thoughts, question mark. First name, can you take a look here? Question mark. First name, lead flow, right? If you can tie your subject line back to the problem that you solve, then you already have a step up because you're not being like lemony or salesy or anything like that. You're straight up telling them conversion rates, right? You're saying web design. You're saying sales efficiency or ramp times, right? Almost every subject line that I use, like I said, I do a lot of testing. I typically do 6 variants of email one. So I'm testing subject lines all the time. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to be completely honest here, the offer matters way more than the subject line. Because if you have a bad offer, you could have the best subject line in the world. They're still not going to answer because they don't want what you're selling. You know, it's like having a rusted out 2000 Toyota Corolla versus like a Ferrari. If a Ferrari lands in your inbox, you're probably going to look at it. You know what I mean? It's just the way it is.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, man. That's I think a lot of great advice and suggestions in that answer, because I assume most sales reps are exactly struggling with that. How to stand out, right? How to be the one person, the one out of many emails, right? The prospects are receiving, that the prospect really is being intrigued to answer, to read, and to reply to. Tell me, what's a big mistake when you work with your customers, when you see other businesses making their cold email outreaches? And what's one of the top or the most common, let's say, mistakes you have observed over the years?
Yeah. So one we already discussed, open tracking, click tracking, signatures, pixelated anything in your emails. Just don't do it. Avoid it at all costs, I would say. Second one, I would say double verifying data, right? So I don't want to poo-poo on any specific providers here, right? But there's two different types of lead databases. There's real-time data scraping, and then there's bulk data management, right? So real-time data scraping is a tool that goes specifically to wherever you're looking and tries to find the data in real time, right? That's one solution. It's way more costly, way more time intensive. And then version 2 is bulk data management, right? I have 50 gigabytes worth of data and I'm updating it on a weekly, or I'm updating it every 2 weeks, or I'm updating it every month. I'm updating it every day. The reason I said it in that way is if you have 50 gigs of data, how long before that person left the company? How long before this person was getting way too many emails, so they changed their email address, right? How long before this person gets a new phone number? All of that are issues that you see in bulk data management. And I would say most organizations really struggle with this because they have a list from an expo 2 years ago, and then they're sending like bulk email to a list that's 2 years old without even verifying that the data is accurate, right? So in terms of outbound statistics, any campaign that has an over 3% bounce rate, turn it off and re-clean your list right off the bat. I'm partnered with Instantly AI. They're great. Love them. They have an auto feature that actually pauses it for you if you're bouncing too much. When I worked in cybersecurity, I was working off of lists that were like 2 years old, and our cold email outreach had a 12% bounce rate. So we didn't land in the inbox probably ever, right? And I booked 2 meetings from email in the whole year, as opposed to like 75 or 80 that I booked on the phone. So I was like, email doesn't even work. And it's just, okay, no, we were doing open tracking. We had really elaborate signatures. We had 15 reps. This is another mistake I could touch on. We had 15 reps all sending from the company's primary domain. That's another big one. If all of your emails are coming from the company domain and you have however many employees all doing it, there's very high likelihood that someone has bad practice and it's actually damaging everybody's communication. So when I build infrastructure for my clients, I always do secondary domains and then have different email accounts. And the reason is I'm diversifying my risk. If any of these domains ever ends up landing in spam, then I can just shut it off. I could rewarm it, or I could just replace it. For the most part, I just replace because it's too annoying to try to get blacklist removals and this, that, or the other. It's just too much work. So I'd rather just replace it. So that's another misconception that I forgot to touch on.
Love it. Yeah. Diversifying your risk, sending emails out from different domains. That's also one of the top tips I usually give new business or SDR, BDR sales reps, because this is so basic to think about. Just as you said, a big company has a lot of people working, most probably that have worked before on those prospects, and they just messed up by sending too many emails, or sending, just as you said, emails loaded full of attachments, or pictures, videos, whatever. So yeah, it's a good point to diversify the risk.
Yeah, and one other thing, Claudio, sorry to interrupt you. I would say as a sales rep, it's really, really hard to go to your uppers and saying, hey, we're doing this wrong, right? You're putting your own head on the chopping block if you do that. So I want to say I sympathize and I empathize with you guys out there. If you don't think email works, it's probably because of your guys' sending practices as a company, and it might be out of your hands. So like, just think about that, right? Like don't beat yourself up too hard if the channel isn't working for you, because there are a lot of factors that go into it and it's not easy. Like I've been doing this for 3 years and I'm still learning stuff every single day. So it's not easy, guys.
Love it. Love the message of encouragement and to say that it's normal, that it's natural, right? To sometimes don't get a response. That's part of the job. All the obstacles in sales are part of the job, and definitely the response rate is a huge one of it. Tell me, Nick, or tell us, you have now mentioned that you are working on your own business, right? So you're helping other sales reps to improve their outbound system. Tell us a little bit more about that endeavor and about your company. And I'm curious to hear also where else we can find you, because you mentioned at the beginning, I think, that you're on LinkedIn, right? That's also how I met you. Where else are you findable? And tell us more about your business, please.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're looking to find me, just hit me at Outbound Expert on LinkedIn. I post some stuff on YouTube, but LinkedIn and Twitter probably are the easiest places to find me. Just go to LinkedIn, I would say. In terms of what I do, so I was working as an enterprise level SDR in the SaaS space. And then COVID happened. We were all working from home, a bunch of stuff happened, obviously. A lot happened in the world. The world changed after that. And I wanted to go out and do it on my own because I recognized a lot of issues that we had within that organization. And I realized that there's a lot of organizations that have the same problems, right? So when I first started, I was primarily working with like founders and owners, and they were just starting their outbound sales process. So if you have questions about how to build an outbound sales process, hit me on LinkedIn. We could definitely talk about it. I'll give you all you need to know about the technicalities of it first, infrastructure wise, because that's step one, right? If you don't land in inbox, it doesn't matter. Step two, how can you find message market fit? How can you segment audiences? How can you write personalized copy that's relevant to every single person in that list? How can you know what audience has what problem? What stage of the funnel are they in? All of these things are very, very valuable. And it's just baby steps toward finding message market fit. Typically, when I'm working with a client, I do one new campaign per week with a new audience or new messaging or both, right? And then every week I look back on the numbers and I'm like, okay, this worked. This didn't work. Let's take this as the new control. Let's try 4 different variants of this as split test to see if it performs better than the last go around. So if I'm going to encapsulate everything I've learned in the last 3 years, it's that more than anything, the offer matters. If you have a very, very strong offer, in my opinion, B2B cold outbound is the cheapest acquisition channel to find customers. I am willing to debate people on this because data is available, right? Especially with AI nowadays. The data is available. You have the opportunity to get in front of your customers if you use the right procedure and the right infrastructure. And then it's on you to offer them something they actually want, right? And those are 2 different games that you have to play. But yeah, I do technical audits. I do deliverability audits. I do sequence audits, list building audits for anyone who's already running an outbound motion. That's probably where I would start. And if you're just now starting to ideate an outbound motion, if you're starting to pick up steam, you feel like your network is exhausted, you can't rely on referrals, they're too unpredictable, then you should start looking into building an outbound motion. And then one other thing I would say, email outbound is not the end all be all. It's my channel. It's my specialty, but I still do LinkedIn content. I'm building the marketing flywheel too. I'm drinking my own medicine per se, right? So it's not one channel or the other. Anyone who says to you, you need to do cold email only, they're trying to sell you something. That's it. That's literally the end all be all. They are trying to sell you that their method is the best, so you would buy their product. There is no best method for every single business. There is no blanket statement, right? If LinkedIn is working for you, keep doing it. If networking and expos is working for you, keep doing it. If cold calling is working for you, keep doing it. If email is working, keep doing it. you know your business better than anyone else. So I'm saying be willing to experiment and try new things. But if something works, double down on it. You're probably going to waste your time trying to do other stuff when you should just focus on what's winning.
Absolutely love it. You are 100% right about this. I think, Nick, there's not a one single approach. And you're right. There's so many ways that what do you say? Many roads lead to Rome, right? So sometimes for some it might be cold calling. For some it's connecting, just as you said, on expos in person, right? For some others it's really outbound email. And I think as more channels you try, and as just as you said, as more as you try A/B testing, right, and adjusting, as higher the chances are that you're going to succeed and find your best way for yourself, right? That's a lot of knowledge compromised in 40 minutes. Thank you so much for thank you so much for sharing this with us, Nick. Thanks for being my guest. Yeah, it's been really cool to hear all that. Curious to hear more on LinkedIn. Yeah, and I'm really wishing you all the best, wishing you a great weekend ahead, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Yeah, Claudio, when I come out to Europe, we'll go get a Guinness because I want to try it in Ireland.
Definitely, we got to do that. Come over, and we're going to go to a nice pub and have some Guinness together. And thank you so much, Nick. I'm dropping out. Give me a second.
This was the podcast Tech Sales and More by Claudio Maedler, presented by techsales-coaching.com. Please take 1 second and support us with a review, and follow us for more episodes of Tech Sales and More on Spotify and YouTube.